I never minded being deaf. In fact, as I grew older, I came to prefer it. Everyone around me seemed to be burdened by noise, endless chatter, clamor, and chaos that I found utterly unnecessary. I loved the quiet, and it allowed me to move through life without distraction. The world for me was a peaceful, muted place where I could focus on what mattered to me, without being overwhelmed by the constant noise. But my parents, Barbara and Louis Cascade, couldn't accept it. To them, my deafness was some personal affront. It felt as though, when I was born, God had handed them a perfect child with one major flaw. I looked like the daughter they always wanted. Blonde hair, porcelain skin, bright blue eyes. But the deafness they thought was an ugly crack in their ideal picture. They tried everything to fix it. Surgeries, alternative medicine, even acupuncture. But when nothing worked, they conceded. Despite their disappointment, I excelled in life. I had great grades, a wonderful job, and I married a man named Teddy, who was everything I could ever ask for. Yet the undercurrent of disappointment from my parents remained. They wanted me to be perfect in their eyes, and so, when the opportunity for surgery presented itself, I agreed. I wanted to make them happy. I wanted to be the daughter they always envisioned. The procedure was experimental, an unproven restoration of hearing that came with a high risk of failure. Dr. Wilson Hubbard, a renowned otolaryngologist, was to perform the surgery. His office was located near my hometown on the outskirts of Seattle, and though I was hesitant, I agreed to undergo the procedure. Teddy couldn't make it due to work commitments, so I flew out to Seattle alone, where I was greeted by my anxious parents. The operation was scheduled, and Dr. Hubbard explained the risk to me in the simplest terms, but I barely processed his words. I just nodded, knowing I was doing this to please my parents. That night, I FaceTimed Teddy before going to sleep. I'd become skilled at reading lips, and as we exchanged I love yous, I signed the words and drifted off to sleep. When I woke up from the anesthesia after the surgery, everything felt strange. I felt pressure in my ears, and the first thing I noticed was that I could hear my own voice. It was an eerie and miraculous sensation. I stammered, and Dr. Hubbard, who reminded me of a slimmer version of Colonel Sanders, stroked his white beard in amusement. My parents were ecstatic, tears streaming down their faces as they embraced me. "Thank you, Dr. Hubbard." "Thank you," my mother cried, her high-pitched voice like a sharp jolt to my newly sensitive ears. The following days were a whirlwind of new sounds, sounds I never thought I would hear. For the first time in my life, I could hear things around me, my parents' voices, the hum of the world, even the sounds of food being prepared. But there was something odd about it. One night at dinner, as I excitedly shared my new experiences, I heard a faint whisper, so soft I almost thought I imagined it. It sounded like my mother's voice, but quieter, almost like a breeze. "It's a shame she still has the same voice," it whispered. Confused, I turned to my mother. "Did you just say something about my voice?" I asked. "No, dear," she replied with a forced smile. "Nobody said anything." But as I looked closer, I could hear more. A faint, squeaky wheel sound, followed by the words, "Bum, bum, bum, mashed potatoes." It was coming from my father as he served food onto his plate. I didn't understand it, but the realization hit me hard. This wasn't just hearing voices. It was hearing sounds that were tied to people's presence. It was as if each person had their own unique sound. In the days that followed, I began to notice more. Mrs. Tucker, our neighbor, had a sound like teeth sinking into fried chicken, while the mailman's sound reminded me of rain on stones. Mr. McGrath, my former teacher, sounded like a choir of farts, which I couldn't help but stifle my laughter at. But not all the sounds were unpleasant. Some were beautiful. Leah Silverstein, the Holocaust survivor down the street, had a haunting, beautiful melody as her sound. It was so powerful that I stood frozen, tears falling from my eyes as I listened to it. But the most magical sounds for me belonged to children. They all had the same sound, a symphony of laughter and joy that made my heart swell every time I heard it. I found myself walking past schools and playgrounds just to hear the collective sound of children's happiness. However, this newfound gift soon became a curse. One day, as I walked through downtown, marveling at the sounds around me, I was suddenly overwhelmed by a terrible, piercing noise. It felt like nails on a chalkboard, and I heard one word: hurt, hurt, hurt. The pain was unbearable, like spikes lodged into my temples. I staggered toward the source, and soon I found myself standing in front of an old rundown hotel, staring at a door marked 3. I called the police, lying about hearing screams from the room, and when they arrived, I watched as they forced their way inside. To my horror, I saw a young girl bound to a bed, her head covered with a plastic bag. I didn't stay long enough to talk to the police, but I watched them arrest the man and rescue the girl. When the plastic bag was removed, the music that had been faint at first grew louder. I left before they could ask me any questions. I didn't tell anyone, not even Teddy, about my newfound ability to hear people's thoughts and sounds. But the next time I saw Dr. Hubbard, I confided in him. He listened intently, then asked me what his sound was. "It's like the crunch of fresh snow beneath boots. It's lovely," I said. The doctor seemed fascinated by my experience, but he also warned me that the procedure was reversible. He offered to undo it if I ever wanted to go back to my quiet life. But I couldn't imagine it. The sounds were too beautiful to shut off. That is, until one day as I was talking with Anita, the house cleaner, I heard the sounds again. This time, it was children's cries, screams of pain and anguish, as if they were being tortured. The noise pierced my skull, each scream worse than the last. I cried, unable to bear the intensity of the sound. As I collapsed to the floor, I saw Teddy walk through the door smiling. But his sound was the worst of all. His was the sound of pain, of unbearable anguish, and of suffering. It was then that I realized Teddy's sound was the one that would haunt me forever. "Are we there yet?" my wife, Alice, asked jokingly. I smiled faintly but didn't respond. We were already 7 hours into our journey, heading to Hotel Shirsilden, an idyllic, isolated place nestled in the mountains, far from the chaos of daily life. Alice kept the mood light, but I couldn't shake the discomfort lingering in my chest. "How do you even pronounce the name?" Alice asked. "No idea. I think it's Scandinavian or something," I replied, focusing on the winding road. "Don't know what it means, though." "You really don't know anything about this place, do you?" she teased. "Hey, just got the brochure. It was a good deal," I said, shrugging it off. I hadn't thought much about the brochure, which had mysteriously appeared on my desk. I didn't know if it came through the mail or from a stranger, but I wasn't one to question things. As we made our way further into the mountains, Alice kept trying to talk about the past, about what had happened, but I wasn't ready to discuss it. I just wanted a break from reality, to escape for a week, and silence seemed the best choice. Finally, we arrived. Hotel Skiersilden stood before us, a magnificent old building that seemed almost out of place in the natural beauty surrounding it. The elderly guests on the porch, sipping tea and smoking, added to the strange atmosphere, dressed in elegant clothes that didn't quite match the casual vibe of the place. "Does the place match the pictures?" Alice asked. "It actually does," I replied, surprised at how beautiful it was. We checked in, and Mr. Alazar Winchester, the receptionist, greeted us with a warm smile. He led us to our room, which was far more luxurious than I expected. It was a good start, or so I thought. But as we walked through the hallways, I noticed something odd. Guests dressed in strange outfits from bygone eras, some looking tired and out of place. "What's up with the costume people?" I asked Mr. Winchester. "Oh, they've been here for a while. We consider them more family than visitors," he said, brushing off my concern. Once in our room, I tried to relax. After a quick refresh, Alice and I headed to the bar, where we were served our favorite drink, caipirinhas, a reminder of our honeymoon in Brazil. It was a nice moment, until a man sitting nearby caught my attention. He looked stressed, flicking through papers and smoking, which irritated me. I politely asked him to stop smoking inside, and he reluctantly agreed. We continued our meal, but I couldn't help but feel a strange vibe from him. After a few drinks, I struck up a conversation with him. He introduced himself as Detective Harold Finch. He revealed he had been working on a case involving a serial killer, but his case files were from 1978. Confused, I made a mental note to look into it later. As the evening wore on, we heard the faint sounds of crying coming from the hallway. Alice, ever compassionate, insisted we investigate. We found a young woman, disfigured, sobbing uncontrollably. Before we could help, Mr. Winchester appeared with some bellboys and ushered the girl away. He escorted us to his office, where he apologized for the gruesome scene. "We'll get her the help she needs," he assured us. That night, despite everything that had happened, I managed to fall asleep. But when I woke up, everything had changed. The girl we had seen, battered and broken, was now perfectly fine. No injuries, no signs of trauma. How is she? How is this possible?" I asked Mr. Winchester. "She's fine," he replied with an unnerving calmness. "And she's not the only one." Confused, I noticed that everyone around me looked off. The detective, still working on his case, had blood all over his jacket, as if he'd been through something violent. It wasn't until I saw him standing in the hallway smiling that the truth hit me. Everyone here was dead. Mr. Winchester explained it to me slowly. "You're the first living person we've had here ever," he said, his tone almost pitiful. I stood there speechless. The guests, all of them, had died at different points in time, but they couldn't move on. They were trapped here, caught in the limbo of their own unfinished business. It was my job, as the living anomaly, to help them move on. Mr. Winchester encouraged me to speak to the guests, starting with the detective. It turned out the detective had been chasing down a killer named Lawrence Harrison for years, but in the end, he died before the case was solved. When I told him that the killer had been locked up in 1978 and had died in prison by 1980, the detective finally let go, relaxed, and smiled. Next, we spoke to the girl. She had died after a car accident, drowned in the cold waters of a crash that she couldn't escape. She had one message to deliver: "I never should have left home." Alice, with her gentle touch, helped her come to terms with it. One by one, we helped the others. But it wasn't until I spoke with Alice that I truly understood. She too was dead. The cancer had taken her a year ago, and she had been lingering, waiting for me to accept her passing. "You've held on long enough," she said gently. "It's time to let me go." In that moment, I realized that this was my purpose now, to help these souls find peace. Alice, my love, had helped me let go, and now it was my turn to help the others. The next morning, after Alice was gone, I found my new purpose. I stood in front of Mr. Winchester, ready to take on my new role at Hotel Silden. "Are you ready to get to work?" he asked, his smile knowing. I nodded, and with that, my new life began. The authorities found my uncle at the end of a rope. That much is certain. He hadn't shown up to work in 2 days. And when his boss called my grandmother, she found him dead in his one-bedroom apartment. The suicide note, written on a small piece of yellow loose leaf and stained with brown liquid, simply read, "Don't follow him." Everyone agreed it was my uncle's handwriting, except for me. I thought it looked off, especially the letter F. The top stroke of the F seemed too wavy, just enough to make me question it. I knew my uncle best after all. No one in my family knew what the note meant, but I did. I knew the story behind it, and I knew who might have written it. But like everything with my uncle, the truth is complicated. I planned on laying it all out at John's funeral. I'd written a eulogy, but when the time came, I never read it. Instead, I mumbled a few generic words. I never shared the truth, what I truly wanted to say. Here's what I couldn't say. There were 2 things you should know about John. First, he was always searching for God. He questioned everything. He wasn't trying to upset anyone. He just couldn't stop looking for truth. This often made him an outcast, especially at family gatherings. But despite his doubts, I respected his drive for understanding. We didn't always see eye to eye. I believed in a divine plan, in God's creation. John didn't, and he couldn't. Second, and this might surprise you, John was haunted. Not in a metaphorical sense. He was literally haunted. He told me about a young woman who appeared to him in the middle of the night. She was no longer a woman, but a bloated, disfigured corpse. Her skin was blotchy, her eyes missing, and she was drenched in water. She always said the same thing: "Don't follow him." At first, John thought it was just his imagination, maybe the result of too many drinks. But the ghost kept coming back, night after night. The words never changed. Don't follow him. I didn't believe John. I thought it was all part of his delusions, his boozing, his isolation, his demons. But I listened. He was my uncle and he believed this. And eventually I started to see that it didn't matter what I believed. What mattered was that John believed it. He tried to figure out who the girl was. If she was dead, she had to have been alive at some point. And he believed her death was connected to something foul. But despite his best efforts, searching through obituaries, speaking to police, and tracking down missing person reports, he found nothing. The girl kept coming back, always with the same message. Don't follow him. John began to think that the ghost wasn't warning him about the girl's fate, but about his own. The ghost became more of a guardian angel than a curse. He started to think that maybe he was meant to find the truth through her. That's when things started to fall apart. John's drinking increased, his paranoia grew. He thought someone was out to get him, but he didn't know when or where. He only knew that the ghost was warning him. Don't follow him. A week before his death, John found him. In a blizzard, John was driving home from a bar when his car broke down. The roads were bad, the snow was heavy, and John was stranded. He saw a figure in the distance, a man walking through the storm toward his car. When the man reached him, he knocked on the window and offered to help. The man claimed there was a gas station nearby, but John felt something was off. The voice, deep and cavernous, warned him not to follow the man. I'm going to stay here, John said. The man left, but John's car miraculously started. As he drove away, he realized the man had lied. There was no gas station. He found a car abandoned by the side of the road, and following the tracks, he discovered a body. The man he'd encountered was dead. John rushed the body to the hospital, but the peace on the man's face unnerved him. The family of the man at the funeral spoke of how he had found God before his death. He was at peace. John realized the ghost had been guiding him, warning him about the man. And the woman's message was clear. Don't follow him. It wasn't just about the dead man, it was about John. Helen's diary revealed the truth. The same strange, wavy letter F appeared on the page. The same F I'd seen on my uncle's suicide note. It was the same handwriting. Helen's ghost was the one who had visited John, warning him to not follow the man. And I believe now that she was trying to save him. But John never listened. He followed the man, and that sealed his fate. The truth doesn't seem to matter anymore. I used to think I knew what was real, what was true, but now all I see is chaos and disorder. I've seen things I can't unsee. And as much as I wanted to be like John when I was younger, I've become him. I'm the one on that snowy road, driving recklessly, haunted by the past. And if anyone follows me, I just hope they hear the warning. Don't follow him.